Good evening, everyone. I call to order the joint workshop of the Victoria City Council and the Planning Commission. For the record, the clerk will note that a quorum of both the council and the Planning Commission are present. Our workshops are informal, and with that, we'll dive right into our agenda. We have one item on our agenda workshop this evening, our workshop agenda this evening, and that's an update on the city-owned 13.5-acre parcel just west of downtown that we refer to as Downtown West. Kicking us off this evening is County Community. You can't talk. I can't.
Some guy.
Community, Mr. Dahl. Let's have you just get us started here. My goodness.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Yes, we do have this workshop is planned to have a joint discussion on the project update for our phase 1 of Downtown West. We do have some folks from the development team that we've been working with that are present that'll be coming and speaking after my very brief kind of background presentation. Mark Mclean, who's the senior director of development for Kraus Anderson, William Matzek from Kimley Horn, and Todd Elkins from Urban Works Architecture. I suppose it would help if I turn that on. So as all of you know, Downtown West is the development name for the 13.5-acre parcel that the city of Victoria owns just west of our current downtown. At the intersection of 5 and 11. City's had this property in its possession for several years, have gone through visioning processes and had master plans developed, and we feel we're at a point where we may actually see development kick off on this parcel very soon. So just a little bit of background on how we got to where we are today. So in 2016, the downtown master plan was updated to include the Downtown West parcel. This master plan guided that area as a mixed-use neighborhood with commercial, office, and residential uses. In 2018, that master plan was narrowed down to specifically focus on the Downtown West area. DJR Architects did the work of providing a master plan concept that was specific to Downtown West through input through the City Council and additional feedback. And then in 2020, the city contracted with Kimley Horn to conduct a utility infrastructure feasibility study. So this took those concepts and those layouts and really put some of the preliminary engineering behind it to be able to determine how utilities would lay out, how stormwater would function, provide some options for how to phase that site with those utilities. And so all of this is based upon both this city council and previous city councils before this one, the vision that's been established for the downtown. And in recent meetings, I think that vision has been reiterated from this council, but the goals and the vision that staff has been working under as we work with our development partners is that Downtown West will be organic and will be able to grow over time and adapt to market changes, that it'll be an active neighborhood that supports local businesses, be fully integrated into the overall downtown with strong connections to the existing downtown, have the ability to provide first floor building space that can begin as residential but can be converted to commercial or live workspace with demand, provide a full range of activities and amenities and employment opportunities, provide design elements that will be carried throughout the entirety of downtown, and also provide a variety of housing types, including market rate apartments, townhomes, and active senior, etc. So with that, we are here to just give an update on the conversations we have been having with Kraus Anderson on a phase 1 of this development. We've been having informal discussions with them over the past several months, and we do have a preliminary development agreement that's part of your regular meeting consent agenda tonight. This proposal includes a 149-unit market rate apartment, would include public utilities and infrastructure, extension of utilities and Steiger Lake to the site, as well as a central green park and stormwater features, and then also the potential creation of a redevelopment TIF district in this area. And staff believes that this preliminary proposal is in line with the downtown master plan and the subsequent vision and studies that have been conducted, and meets the city council's strategic goals for the site. And with that, I will turn it over to the development team to provide some additional information.
Terrific. Thank you, Marty. Who's going to be joining us first? Welcome. Please state your name for the record.
I am Mark Mclean, Senior Director of Development at Kraus Developments. Commissioners, council members, Mayor, thank you for the time this evening. I can just give 30 seconds of kind of background and then jump into a segue to bring some of our civil engineering, architecture, and cross-functional team members up to talk about where we're at. I think Marty summed it up well. We've had the benefit at KA of being able to have a number of informal meetings. There's been a process you guys have been going through for a period of time, really kind of being thoughtful and mindful about what you want to see developed here and the vision. And we've gotten the benefit of meeting with city staff a few times. And I think one of my initial takeaways was the alignment that we had with a lot of those vision statements that Marty just referenced. In part of Kraus Anderson's DNA is we rarely sell anything. We are not a prototypical kind of build and sell merchant type developer. So we get pretty selective. We don't always look for kind of the obvious, but we look for the best communities that we can fit in and where in 30 years that opportunity is going to be as good or better as it is today. And so those vision statements are very important to us. And you know, the three that stick out with our guiding principles for what we see as the opportunity here is really being able to be that kind of pioneering piece that can be a catalyst to help galvanize that vision a little bit, supporting the very cool downtown you guys already have going, while also kind of bringing new, unique commercial mixes, employment opportunities, and kind of diversity and housing choice into the market. We see a really nice opportunity for connectivity. Not frequently do you have the opportunity to be next to a park reserve that has that kind of opportunity for a lifestyle that doesn't exist in more kind of core urban and other suburban settings. And then tying that all back out to the regional trail system and also walkable to that very cool downtown that is, again, from a developer's perspective, a very rare opportunity. So we felt that alignment from kind of the get-go, and that is exceptionally important to us. And so we kind of started working on what that partnership might look like. In the spirit of this working session, we're admittedly at the beginning of the beginning still with the kind of built form and programming of it. We understand that the guiding principles are what need to guide, that align with the vision for what you guys want to happen with the rest of the redevelopment of the overall master site plan. But we really want to have kind of that informal session with you all to get some feedback, answer any questions, and know that, you know, we've been through a few iterations of kind of raw program and things that inform everything I just spoke about. But under no circumstance are we kind of saying, here's what it is, and here's our precedent images and things like that. I think there's still a lot of collaboration that is yet to come on that front. So with that, maybe I can turn it over to Todd Elkins, let him introduce himself.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. McLean.
Thank you.
Mr. Elkins,
Yes.
please state your name and affiliation for our record.
Todd Elkins, partner with Urban Works Architecture. Thank you for having us on such a beautiful fall evening.
Yes.
So I just want to touch on briefly on the design right now. So the criteria and constraints we were given that really helped us do our initial layout is there's the infrastructure, the roadway system, the pathways, the overarching goals for downtown West for the city. And then how can we locate in 4 stories above grade approximately 125 to 150 market rate apartments with amenities, maintaining the opportunity for a pathway along the reserve and working kind of with the existing topography. We have a bit of a grade change there. And also to be able to make sure that we can park it enclosed, at least one parking stall per bedroom. Some of the basic bones of it. And so as we looked at it, the low spot is to the east side. We wanted to have our building front door right off that central green to kind of reinforce that as a central and maybe a heart of the space. And then we also like to have sort of units, especially on the first floor, that maybe have front doors, porches, decks out to the public street. It's crime prevention through environmental design, they call it, but it's the idea that when you have sidewalks and you have people who live and look out on that street, it's a much safer feeling place, comfortable place, and more interesting place to be. So we laid out the building, we laid it out with the courtyard above the parking that faces the lake for the views, and the idea is that there'll be an amenity deck on top where there's not building, yet to be really defined, but something along with the market rate and the views. So it's 4 stories above grade, with a lot of it being parked underneath, and appropriately sized colored boxes for different things, but for the amenity space. So what we're seeing in the market today is a lot of work at home, live work. So almost a lot more study carrels, as it were, for people who now can get to work remotely, and they don't like to move from one bedroom to the other necessarily. They kind of want to at least get out of their apartment. So we would see amenities of that nature: exercise facility, lounge. Dogs are the children of the new renters, so it would be pet friendly. It's a beautiful site. It's a great market. We're seeing also, just in terms of the marketplace, a lot of people selling homes these days because the market is strong, and then renting for a period of time to wait till the market to cool, and they're finding that they actually really enjoy not having the maintenance and headaches. So we're seeing a really strong market. So the site lays out really wonderfully. Love the fact that we're reinforcing the central green, that stormwater has already been figured out, which is really wonderful. And we'd love to see it continue to move forward, and happy to answer any questions.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Elkins. Last gentleman with us, Mr. Matzik. Do you want to address the council here before we get started with our questions?
Sounds great. My name is Will Matzik. I'm with Kimley Horn and Associates, and I can just build a little bit on to what Todd and Mark had spoke about previously. We've worked in collaboration between city staff previously, and then with this plan here, with the road alignment, the proposed project lays in very well with that. Can be served well with utilities and the proposed extension, and then really the grades out there that will lend itself really well to this type of a project, where really kind of ground level will be out facing the public green on that main level, and then lower access below in the southeast corner to the underground parking. And then thinking about stormwater wise, really creating an amenity type stormwater system in the central part of the site. So we would see those things all working together between this project and some of the public infrastructure that will be proposed. So happy to answer any questions as we proceed here, but thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Matzik. Council and commissioners, we have these very smart gentlemen sitting in front of us here. Let's give them some good questions.
You'll just start at one end and work your way over.
Who wants to kick us off here?
Laura?
I can. Yeah, sure. Terrific. Commissioner Moore, go ahead.
So always top of mind is parking for me. And so as I'm thinking about the opportunity of the first floor spaces being transformed into retail or office at a later time, the parking ratios are going to be incredibly important that we get right out of the gates. Typical office parking ratios are 4 per 1,000 square feet. So, that's Monday through Sunday, regular business hours. So if we have apartment units in this building that have parking stalls, 2 stalls per bedroom, we really need to have almost all of those down below. Without seeing a plan that shows the stalls that are in front of the building and counting that out and really understanding what that looks like, it's really, really important that we get that right. That's my first thought. And I'm curious if you guys, I'm sure you spent a lot of time thinking about that. I'd love to hear feedback on those issues. And then was the other item? Market rate apartments. So I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Does anybody want to, which one of you guys wants to take that question?
Yeah, I can take that. So
Mark, why don't you, I'm going to ask you to come up to the microphone so we can hear you.
What we're contemplating right now for parking, and there's a parking plate in your guys' packet, and a metric sheet towards the end. I think we're just over 2 per bedroom. So I think we're in that 1.4, 1.35-ish per unit. And so historically what that trends to for us in this type of application is being a little bit overparked. But you're right, that's going to be a self-contained, secured, underground application for resident parking. And that there has to be kind of integrity in that security, right? And that bifurcation. So we're going to have to figure out, I think, get much more granular in a collaborative way on kind of what those uses are going to be. We've seen, I mean, we have quite a large portfolio, and we've seen some weird things happening with parking, and we're not sure if some of these trends are here to stay or if they're not. I mean, some of our retail applications, we've been converting parking to more convenience type applications, grab and goes and things like that, and kind of curb cut type applications. And then some of our service folks are a little bit down, and then our typical kind of suburban office component, which historically, yeah, they were at that minimum and probably more, has dropped way off. And so we're trying to figure out, and I think the best way to do that is really, once we get this a little bit more refined, knowing they're going to be built as potentially convertible units or work from home, probably lend themselves. We're doing a project in St. Paul at University in Raymond that we have this same convertible service unit, and we actually have like an incubator space in it. And so we have a little bit of, we're going to have some precedent information, I think, on kind of what the momentum is like there. But I think a conversation around like, who do we actually see as the desired users, you know, down to that user level. Is it a dentist, or is it a tax preparation or a florist? And really kind of having that conversation maybe more at large with the community about what the uses might be when and if that conversion happens, right? Because we'll build the built form space will accommodate for it, and then we got to kind of let it happen organically. But I think informing that a little bit better will help with those parking ratios. Mm-hmm. And then it's, where do we put the public piece of the parking, which admittedly we haven't gotten to that detail yet. I think the parking up there is probably more representative for the public amenity of the Central Green than it is for a retail application. So I would agree with your sentiments.
Thank you. Commissioner Moore, anything else?
No, I think it's wonderful that you are contemplating creating a usage plan, if you will, with knowing what kind of parking demands each business are. You know, you referenced the amenity type tenant, which is really going to be great, because they're not going to, if that's in fact an amenity tenant, you've got other residents walking over. They're not taking up parking stalls. So a project like this would obviously lend itself to that. So that's great.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Kuhn, any thoughts from you? Questions?
I think it's a great concept. My only question, there is a property owner. Has that been taken care of?
Is there a property owner?
No, the property that is included in this off of Steiger Lake.
Yeah, great question.
Oh.
So timing is always challenging, right? And we like to be very conservative. Our team does generally. We've been in conversation for over a year, so those conversations are open, they're happening. If we didn't feel confident that there was a resolution there, we certainly wouldn't be in front of you tonight. But I can't sit here and say it's taken care of right now, no. But knowing that there's a few elements that need to lead into that, that's kind of why we were, you know, let's talk about what we can talk about tonight. And we're providing, what would you say, Marty, weekly updates on where we're at with that. So that is our commitment, is that we're going to report back anything, but we're spending dollars and resources and things like that. So I think we feel fairly confident. If we don't, we're going to have to come back in front of you with a different plan, though. So It's a good question.
Thank you. Commissioner Kuhn, anything else? Commissioner Peterson?
I think you've covered everything that I had questions on regarding parking, impact on the current businesses, and you mentioned the fact that you've considered and been in contact with the Highway 5 expansion. It seems that this will be off that a little bit, but is there going to be any impact when that goes through? I mean, it's doubling of the lanes and other types of things that are going on. It's 10 to 20 years down the road, but better to know that now than have to redesign it later.
Mr. Dahl is moving towards.
He's ready.
He's creeping already. So those are the three that I had.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Pedersen, members of the Commission and Council. Yes, we've had several meetings with MnDOT on the intersection access there. So as you know, there is currently a full access to Steiger Lake, almost in the exact location where the proposed new access is to be, give or take a few feet. But obviously that would be the line so that Steiger Lake would go up through the parcel. So similar to the property question, I can't say that we have that completely figured out at this moment either, but we are continuing to have those conversations with MnDOT. The city is of the opinion that a full access is absolutely necessary for this parcel to be able to function the way that we want to have it. And we're continuing those conversations with MnDOT as well.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pedersen, anything else?
That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Hebert.
I do have one question. I want to back up for a minute and talk about the convertible units. Just kind of from my understanding, how does that work on the initial build of it? Are they built into the apartments initially and then converted later? What does that process look like? I'm sorry if I missed it the first time through, but I want to kind of get a picture in my head. They're convertible. You said it could be a dentist's office or a florist, right? So what is it initially?
Well, they're great questions because it has not readily been done in the market, and so I think there's a couple different nuances. There's live-work units, which are more of a conversation that we would have around business licensing and things like that. That's similar to what we're doing in St. Paul off the Green Line there, that the city would allow folks to operate out of their business, and so they're a different configured multi-tenant unit. So it's actually that residence housing unit that they run a business out of. So I think that's something to look at. And I'll have great data on the success of that. And also in that building, we're doing a little commercial application that we're calling an Incubator Space, which is really the neighborhood is kind of helping with our on-site property management in programming. And so that is going to be really geared towards pop-up businesses, neighborhood vendors, things like that, that maybe can't afford or don't want to sign long-term commitments to a bricks and mortar location, but want some proof of concept to do an art show or to do, we've had luxury popsicle. I mean, there's a whole host of different things that we're talking about with neighborhood businesses on that. So, but I think those are relevant in the standpoint from the actual constructability of the space. We would have to set it up. They would be built out as units, just to answer the question, because that's where the clear demand is right now.
As apartment units.
Yeah, as residential units. But then we build them with the infrastructure that they could be convertible, appropriate ceiling heights, appropriate MEP systems and things like that. That could be built into units later on. Now, full disclaimer, they're never going to be a Five Guys restaurant or something like that, or a full service restaurant. It's probably not going to go to that degree. It's going to be more service oriented, more office oriented, less so, there's just not going to be the functionality to do a quick serve restaurant or something like that out of there. But I don't know if that's necessarily what the community wants either. And you guys, I think when we do broader engagement and outreach, we'll find that out a little bit better. And then maybe we, figure out other places on the site, because there is ample areas for some of those other retail uses. But ours will be geared more towards small shop space type users, mom and pop type folks, to use that, vernacular.
And so I guess the next question comes then, if the first thought is that they're going to be apartment units, right? I have no doubt that you could sell those out immediately. I don't know how quickly you could sell out a mom and pop type business, right? So if they all get sold as apartment buildings, apartment units, right? How do we develop that then, right? Because these people will sign leases and so forth. How does that convertible, that piece work then, right?
Yeah, good question. So our typical lease would run for a year. And, having come out of the retail leasing and the retail construction business, it takes a while to kind of get that retail user in line and get their financing in line and sign their lease and all those kind of things. So I think we want to let this happen organically, because we have experienced firsthand in some of our more traditional mixed use projects, if that retail doesn't lease, it really becomes a detriment to the overall community, the development, if it's just blank storefronts. And so we're trying to walk this fine line, and again, it hasn't been done a ton in this market, of knowing where the demand is, letting it kind of unfurl organically, and then have a full and vibrant community within that apartment complex. So there could be some clunkiness with the timing, full admittance, but I think building the community and then continuing to market on parallel path with potential users for a space, I think it'll be somewhat seamless if we get it there too. And so just thinking out loud, seeing how the rest of the site develops out too, I think is going to inform a little bit who those users may or may not be as well. Right now, I don't know. We have ideas that we're talking about, and we'll get community input on that, but I don't know if we know for certain that this is the right user or that's the right user. I think the rest of the community and what the rest of that site wants to be is going to really inform what a cohesive mix might look like, and then we'll go target those folks. But this gives us time to do that.
Okay.
Councilmember Hebert, anything else?
Not at this time.
I'm just going to stay up here now.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I have a couple of follow-up questions. So when you think about those, kind of following up on Councilmember Hebert's question, some of those users that you think would be, great retail users, these are people who would or would not likely have a storefront, or do you see them being, maybe it's an insurance agent and he lives in the back and he's got an office in the front and he can bring clients into the front part of, and is that more what you're thinking about?
I think it could be both, but I think what we're piloting in St. Paul is more the latter of what you're talking about, because a lot of times your independent people cannot afford that storefront with rents, with retail and commercial rents running where they're at, and the level of commitment from a duration standpoint that you have to make. We're hoping this bridges that gap of someone being able to have a bricks and mortar location that also is their residence. So I think that's the bridging the gap scenario for some of those service-based providers. But I think the opportunity exists to do a storefront too. I mean, that would be kind of the built form stuff we were talking about.
Okay.
If someone wanted to do a formal storefront, we build it out.
With signage or some kind of a shingle that says.
Yeah, it
welcome
would
to
look like
business?
just normal mixed use.
Sure, great. Please, come on up to the podium though, if you would, please, because our friends that are watching us on TV can't hear
I
you.
just want to add, what we're starting to see now with this live work, or people doing that, is as an amenity, we've expanded meeting areas, spaces to gather and meet. And with today's new work style, we're seeing people in so many different industries will live in the apartment and schedule some of the common space to have meetings, conferences, etc. So it's just a whole new way of commercials. It's not the traditional commercial space that we would see where it'd be a tax preparer, where you do have that front office and then they live in the back kind of type situation. So since COVID has happened in a lot of similar projects in locations like this, we've seen a lot of pressure on those spaces that we haven't made them large enough now, because everybody works remotely. So to Zoom conference where you don't have your pet maybe or a child in the background where you can get away. So we're seeing a great expansion of that, and that to me is what I would expect to see here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's to add to that. That's kind of a supportive element. Even pre-pandemic, we were really interested in is doing these work from homes and really amplified kind of business centers for the changing workforce. And now we're very glad we started, implementing that in some of our previous developments. And now we're doubling and tripling that because it's a trend that on some level is here to stay, and to be able to have that space to work outside of your front door but still in your community is about as good of amenity space as you can get. And so that's taking the place of some of our other less utilized. So there's still going to be unique and cool things, and the saunas and the pools and all those kind of things, but that work from home space on a day-to-day basis is really really activated.
I am watching that with such great interest. I'm so interested to see how that all unfolds. Then I have one more question around when Councilmember Hebert kind of asked what that was, you said you were gonna, kind of find out what the community wants. What's your process for going about, how do you engage the community in that conversation?
So every community is a little bit different. In some of our more kind of core urban neighborhoods, there generally is there's a kind of a neighborhood a neighborhood group or organization. St. Paul was a great example. They were a very tight-stitched community, and there's a community enterprise zone that was a fantastic facilitator and kind of integrator, and we worked so well side by side with them. I think I don't have a great answer right now, but I think we have to come together with kind of an outreach program. And maybe it's as simple as, an idea charrette or something like that. I've done in my former life a lot of kind of broad-based master planning on a bigger national and regional level. And so sometimes it's just an open house, and it's the folks that are interested come, and you do the sticky points or the dots in the different sectors of what would you like to see here kind of thing. And I think some of those that worked in tandem with the overall master planning exercise, especially with a phase 2 or phase 3, there'd be a lot of synergy to that. I don't know if it's necessitates for a couple small commercial spaces to do that kind of an effort, but for the overall and us as a component of that, I think that would be a fantastic evening. Mm-hmm. But that's one thought and idea, but I think we have to kind of flesh that out.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Gunderson.
So our goal is to bring people into downtown. And when I advocated for the building across the street, my biggest frustration to date has been the fact that we don't have retail there. Because what's on that first level, I've been lucky enough to work from home since 2014. And when that was built, I've kind of kept tabs on who's using, because I can look in and see what's going on. Rarely do I see people in those spaces. And so to me, it's a waste of a storefront that what I see during the day and what I see at night when people are walking by there are people looking in the window to see if something's in there. If we're trying to bring people downtown, I love the ideas of allowing people to have kind of live behind and work in front. But I also want to see some retail, because I think we're missing a big section of our population, and we are missing some amenities in Victoria that I would love to see. We don't have a quick serve coffee shop or a mom and pop coffee shop with early hours or regular hours where people can come and get a cup of coffee and get out. We have Ruby's Roost. We had one that was earlier there, no longer in their space. So we really don't have anything that operates on business hours. I'd love to see how we can incorporate that. I would still love to see if we can transfer that space into retail, but I think that ship has sailed. So as we bring people down, that's what I want to see here, because if you're the first and you're going to get a lot of these hard questions, I want this to be an attraction so people come and use it, and then they start to come and use all the other buildings that we developed down there in this 13.5 acres, because this is kind of what our vision of a cohesive flow to downtown. For me, it's how are we using it during the day? How are we using it at night? Who are we bringing in, right? And at what times are they coming in, so that we have the business we have the customer base our businesses want, right? And they're succeeding, so that we don't continually see the turnover on businesses that we might otherwise if we're not planned out adequately. So that's just I think it's a good plan. I am curious, is there a reason why? Because I think on one of the other iterations of this, it was flipped. The site was flipped, and kind of the U was up against the woods. Was this to give you the preserve, is this to give you more, or to give more space, buildable space? Or, because I think that would work both ways. The way you mentioned the security and the more secure feel, people being out front. But if you flipped it and had the pool in kind of that area, I don't know if that would.
Yeah, and great talking points on the mixed use side of it. From the configuration and the layout, that was an earlier iteration, a smaller iteration. So without increasing height or really kind of visual intensity, we want to get to a little bit more efficient. We think there's a sweet spot, kind of an organic sweet spot when you're building an apartment community. And it's really important to us that we're not building kind of, large, impersonal, detached residential units. We really work hard with our management group to build a strong community, because that builds retention. It just builds a healthier project, healthier neighborhood. So that sweet spot, we were at about 125, 130 units before. It was a little bit inefficient. And so we kind of went through some different iterations, found a better way to get more parking under there, which allowed us to put a few more units with the same height and intensity and still kind of achieve those goals. And then we got to that 145, and that will allow us to bring more residential staff members in too. It kind of hits that sweet spot of being able to have a couple more front of house people, concierge people and staff people and things like that, that again, help to amplify that kind of building of community. So, but again, early, we don't know exactly where it's going to go, and it may need to completely flip should we not be able to get that additional piece. And then we'll
I just wanted to find out if this current iteration adds more space, though.
Yeah, and we really didn't want to turn our back on the reserve either. I think and there'll be a lot more refinement that comes along, but giving kind of an urban village entry, but then also kind of not, really that beautiful amenity, the reserve there, and really kind of not turning our back on that. That was another thing is that went along with the efficiency.
No, I agree. I think that's great. You're utilizing the view to the best you can with this. So hopefully you can make it work. But again, for me, retail is going to be a big thing, and how that looks and how we can flesh that out as we start our development here. Because if we're trying to bring people in, which we are, to use downtown, it's going to be this is here. They're living here, but it's also to bring our residents that don't live downtown to downtown.
Yeah. Councilmember Gunderson, anything else? Nope. Councilmember Black.
Thank you. So I take it that green spot is a pool, blue spot.
Yeah.
It is a pool? Good.
Yes. Not hyper detailed right now.
Finally.
Theoretically, it's a pool, yes.
And then I was wondering about when you drive into the complex, you're going straight into the underground parking?
Yeah, so the way to keep the intensity down and the visual, without kind of feeling like it's cavernous coming in, is working with that grade. And so we have, about 12 feet of drop off there?
Yeah, that low spot is 12 feet below sort of where the elevation is of the central green. So you're almost driving straight into that lower level of parking. We want to kind of hide the parking, so along the public pathways, biking, walking, to obscure the exposed parking structure.
Basically building it into the hill to hide the parking. But yeah, you'd enter it directly into the parking structure.
Okay, so is the structure open or is it enclosed?
It's enclosed. It's got a lid on it. The pool's on top of the parking, actually.
Okay, yeah. Well, I kind of figured that because I saw the map with all the parking underneath. So anybody that goes to any of these apartments, or if they have a business, will only be able to access it going into the underground parking. Is that correct?
Well, I think there's going to be convenience stalls up by the green and things like that, because that's actually where the front door, prospective residents,
how are they going to get in there?
Through the building lobby, the amenity lobby, there'll be a security system where you can be buzzed in.
I'm talking about with your car.
Oh, with your car, you go through the lower level if you're a resident. Residents are the ones it'd be secure parking.
Okay, so if a person had a business, how would the customer get in?
So that would be resident parking only down on
So
the
where would
lowest
the
level.
customer park?
yeah, that's what we're still gonna have to figure out. And I think that's kind of what comes with some of the retail considerations that we have to work through, because then we're talking about, you know, where do we park them? Where's the public parking? Where's the retail parking? And I think a broader conversation about kind of informing from the overall master plan and what we see with some of those additional and ancillary uses probably needs to happen too, because that'll maybe talk a little bit about where we want to park things and exactly how we want to park things.
So this is pretty preliminary. You haven't figured all of it out yet. Okay. Because I was also wondering, with having 125 to 150 units with that many 300 maybe people, if, heaven forbid, there was a fire, the only way they're going to get their stuff out is through that one drive. Is that a safety issue?
It would comply with code. We have stairs that you can, in case of fire, there are stairs. The parking structure it's technical type 1 construction, so it's non-combustible. It's not wood. It's all concrete. And usually in fires, you're not worried about cars. You're worried about the people. And there are multiple exits for people out of the parking level.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I was just wondering about how they could get out. If everybody was trying to get out.
Hopefully not with their cars.
Yeah.
Yes. That would be a problem.
Okay, and then all around the pool, is that going to be parking and stuff, or?
No. So we really haven't designed the outside amenity because it's very preliminary. But there would be a pool. We would do that. So typically the amenities we see on top would be sort of the outdoor kitchen, grilling stations, farmer's table, lights. We're starting to see saunas. It's a constantly morphing, changing topography. You could see hammocks. You could see poles put up on hammocks, because people love hammocks. And it'd be some landscaping, which is always nice. It's great during the warm summer months, like tonight, but also we want it to be attractive and appealing in the cold winter months, because people are looking out on it and its views. So it may have a dog run out there in a location far away from units towards the far end and stuff. And we would want to probably do some sort of secure connection down to the, maybe along the edge where there might be walking or biking trails. Okay. So if people want to do that.
So there's different size units as well?
Yeah, the colored boxes are representative of 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom studios, 1+ dens. I can't remember if we had 3 bedrooms out here.
We haven't gotten that granular yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we're showing some larger units. We are seeing actually in the marketplace demand, once again due to COVID, demand for more 2 bedrooms because people are working from home more. So the market study will tell us maybe what the right mix is.
So, okay, so I have a business in my home, and I'm a hairstylist. I have a salon, and there's certain rules and how they can come in and where they can be and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
How would that work here for someone that wanted to?
Yeah, and I think that's a broader conversation around business licensing. I know that was a big piece of it with City of St. Paul that we had to figure out is kind of, you know, who can we market to? Who can we solicit to come into these live workspaces? And I think I'm not an expert on Victoria's ordinances in that regard. So I think we would have to have a separate meeting on how and what is allowed for, and you know how we be intentional about that.
Okay, Councilmember Black, anything else?
That's it.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Councilmember Roberts.
I just have a couple things. I think everyone else has pretty much covered most of the stuff. So you mentioned, you know, having community feedback about what maybe would go, you know, what they'd like to see on the bottom. We always hear 2 things here, right? It's always about parking, and the other thing is grocery store, right? And so it might be a pipe dream, but I would highly recommend, I mean, I think the city would love you if you were somehow able to get a grocery store on the first, like on the main level. So, so that would be just my 2 cents on, you know, I look at the newer apartments in Chanhassen, they have, you know, the apartments, and on the bottom floor, there's an Aldi, right? So I think, you know, there's a great opportunity there. So that would I think be something the city would like to see. Obviously, if it's doable, might be a pipe dream, but it's something to work towards. And then obviously that would affect parking. But I mean, so I believe, right? So there's a lot of street parking that is envisioned here, right? So if someday there were not necessarily a grocery store, but there are mom and pop type shops on the first level, that's where people would park on the street and get to it, correct?
Yeah, I think that's one option. I mean, it's so dependent on the user, and that world's evolving. I mean, grocery is a good one. We're in development on a couple different groceries right now, and so we're having those conversations and being your guys' best advocate in the marketplace. I'll tell you that right now. So the feedback generally from them is that their parking intensities have not wavered. Obviously, that's been a very good business pre and post pandemic, and it continues to be so. While we're finding those opportunities, I think that would be us coming back and saying, if we were able to solicit that user, it's going to be a lot more collaborative in figuring out, this plan probably changes quite significantly as far as our portion of it. But
is it possible?
We're not against. We're open to it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I think about the West End in St. Louis Park, right? Is it even possible out here? If we look at something, right, we get a grocery store or something big that decides to go in the first floor. Is it possible to go down 2 levels right? Like where you have secured parking for your residents and you have another parking level for the public? If we're looking at.
Yeah, there's geotechnical implications and things like that. But we've done it. I mean, in Minneapolis right now, we're going down 3. I mean, I think we're 70 feet below ground or something like that. So there's all kinds of ancillary implications and things like that. But
you're going to probably have a high water table being
Sure, yeah, that was my question.
Down,
Todd, you could do it better if you moved it out away from the lake.
Yeah, and so I was just calculating, because we're looking at a mixed use with grocery, which is like the best amenity a resident can have up above.
Sure.
I live right near it's a condominium, but it's got a Lunds on the first floor. And the cost of the amenity is a key fob door. And you would see people on weekend mornings down there just purchasing stuff. But you'd probably be 20,000 square feet at the smallest, assuming that type of grocery. Figuring out loading docks, because they do bring trucks. So this plan would be it'd be awesome though.
Yep.
It would be awesome.
There's a lot of space on this site to accommodate grocery.
Yeah, generally it's all economic, and Will, you hit it. I mean, that's where the broader conversation of the overall site, because letting everything kind of unfurl organically through the rest of the site with all the acreage we have out there and kind of making things, having some continuity in kind of how a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, you don't want to see, phase 1 be kind of all jammed in. But high water table, I rely on these guys to tell me where the water table's at. I thought we were on high ground there, but apparently not. It all kind of distills down to economics for that grocer too.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so if you're having to factor underground parking, and they really don't like to not have a ability for a shopping cart to roll directly out to. So if you're talking about elevators or conveyor systems and things like that. But if we are able to collectively solicit some interest from grocery, we will happily sit down and find a way to make it work. And whether that's on our site or that's in confluence on a phase 2 that, has some continuity with our site, because it's good for all of us. It really is, and it's needed out here.
Perfect. No, that's, like I said, it might be a pipe dream, but we'd be remiss if we didn't ask, right? Because that's one of the number one things that we ask.
The more momentum we get going, the more they listen to us.
And then do you have plans, just one last quick question, for the, you have a great view there. So do you have plans for the rooftop at this point? Could it be a restaurant? Could it be is it more like amenities for, patio for the apartment users or anything?
We haven't gotten into kind of a rooftop plan yet. That's a pretty large deck area, so we're going to kind of, refine that out a little bit more and see. Sometimes it's ordinance driven too, and I don't think
you won't get a restaurant up there.
Okay.
Only because it's built out of wood, and you're just not, by code, you're not allowed to. Going back to the idea of if there's a fire and stuff, but you could do a small 750 square foot amenity space, both indoor and outdoor, for the residents, and we've seen that other places because it's it's more the quiet amenity. Where you sip your wine at the fire table and enjoy the sunset.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Roberts. We're going to go quickly here so everybody can get their questions in. Commissioner Iverson, you're up.
Real good. Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you. So we are a city of parks, lakes, and cars. And traffic is always a problem in literally every development that we're looking at. I think it's been addressed in part. I think it's been addressed in part. But I look at when I originally looked at this concept that was proposed a number of months ago, I referenced where the Gold Nugget is at on Excelsior Boulevard and Eden Prairie Road, and the need, and that's a combination of apartments and retail. And there's never enough parking. And that's something that's just an unfortunate reality, and I think it'll remain an unfortunate reality. And like Laura had said, X number of parking places per apartment at the same time. And it seems as though it's always under what we need. So it's been covered by others. It is preliminary. It is organic, and it's going to have to it's going to get tightened up. And I think one of the ways that this gentleman here had recommended also is a select group of residents that come together and say, so in an organized manner, here's really what we envision. We'll get some good ideas, and we'll probably get some not so good ideas at the same time. But I think it's a real effective method of getting information that, quite frankly, you wouldn't get from the group of us, for example, although it should be, but some of the other ideas. So I would look at for city staff, I would look at putting that together. So I think the good news is that other members of the Planning Commission brought up all of my good ideas before I had a chance to bring them up. So thank you, everyone.
The beast of landing in the last row, right?
Yep, exactly.
Thank you, Commissioner Iverson. Commissioner Schwarting.
When you thought about 10 more questions you had.
Commissioner Schwarting, can we go to you?
So we constantly talk about affordable housing. Is this part of the solution? It doesn't really seem like it.
This particular development, and we do quite a fair amount of affordable and mixed income housing, doesn't contemplate any prescriptive affordable. It's a discussion that can be had. I think when I look at diversity in housing choice offered, I see things like very high median households, incomes and values, and very low densities and things like that. And so I say, okay, one of the things that I know I can make work right today and start to provide kind of more supply is providing a little bit of density. I think from a rental rate standpoint, we're trying to be very mindful of around all of these conversations of cost implications too, because under no circumstances are we thinking this is going to be a downtown level, AA super rent project. So letting it kind of float to the organic market demand and getting a little supply, offering a little bit of diversity of housing choice is kind of where we're at, our thoughts on this development. We see where that goes. There's a lot of other boxes kind of happening on there. I don't see why not. I think it's more of a conversation back to that overall cohesive master plan kind of discussion.
Right. So it's really the city. The city has to walk the talk. relative to affordable housing. We talk about it a lot, but here we have an opportunity to do something. So we have to decide if we're going to do something.
Yeah, I mean,
That's just a point. Hey, second thing, John mentioned we're a town of parks, lakes, and cars. This particular unit, which I think looks really nice, it's going to be bikes. Think about bikes. You're right by Carver Park. You've got a brand new mountain bike trail. I ride in the park frequently, and you go over to the mountain bike area, and it's packed. And I have new neighbors in my neighborhood. They got mountain bikes galore. So I think make sure you recognize that, because you work from home and bike during the day, whatever. You're going to have a lot of opportunity for people who want to engage the Carver Park bike opportunity.
Yeah, we've had almost more bike parking in our recent developments than automobile and secure bike parking too.
So I think you're going to have a need for that.
And you have bike rooms that are more for tuning up and maintaining your bikes than they are just for storing them.
Yeah.
Yep. Fix-it
Excellent
rooms,
point.
maker studios, and all those good things.
Okay, that's it.
With 2 minutes.
Commissioner Murray, please.
Thanks. I have a couple of concerns. I'm kind of looking at our finite amount of land and kind of putting the apartments, which to me is the easiest thing to develop. We know there's a high demand for this right there, right next to downtown. And also, it kind of seems like the way that the building is oriented, it's like the apartment is kind of an island of itself. It's like community don't come in, we won't come out. And I know you said there's going to be storefront maybe, but I feel like if we start with apartments, they're always going to be apartments. I've seen developments that's probably not going to morph. I like the idea of it, but I will say I'd bet my right hand that it'll be apartments just because that's where the demand is, and we know that. I'd like it to be more open and I know you weren't trying to, it looks like the pool is for the residents only, and I get that there's some benefit to that, but you can't even see in there. And so as a community member, when you're driving around, you're like, wait a minute, what, and you're taking the best spot on the lake. And so if we're not going to have any retail there and we can't somehow get in grocery or something, I have a little bit of a concern how that might play out. So I think we really want to look at that.
Yeah, I think, we're following one of those vision statements of trying to make this kind of an urban village type concept. I think reorientating the building on the site is okay. We don't want to turn our back to the Park Reserve from our community standpoint. So I think, is there a happy medium in there?
Let them get in. Or open it up a little, because it looks very closed. And I think that was one of the other comments that Judy had. You can't even see how you get in as a non-resident to visit a resident right now unless you go.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too. We gotta, back to our comment on traffic and parking, we were really trying to be mindful about keeping all of our residents' traffic off of what are gonna be more pedestrian friendly kind of nodes and walking streets and the water features and stuff like that. But these are all, we can work through all these and reorientate buildings and do all those kinds of things.
I think a little bit. And then again, I just go back to what Victoria residents really want is they really want some retail down here. They really want something downtown that gives them a reason to come downtown and just expands. We have these beautiful restaurants. People are coming here. We're using downtown. And so more of that is wanted. And I think the residential will come, but we kind of want it to come together. Because if we just get the apartments, do we get retail? Maybe not. So I think we have to be really mindful about how we do this. It can't be, we do phase 1 and we only do housing, and then phase 2, we're 10 years down the road and we still haven't got phase 2. So I think we have to really think about that on this front end.
Yeah, and I think there's been a pretty robust campaign to get retail and grocery here for a long time, and it's exceedingly painful when storefronts sit empty. So there has to be momentum. Yeah. And whether that comes by leading with rooftops or leading with an anchor user, I agree. I think, we're focusing on our piece. There has to be we don't want to be the only piece sitting there in 10 years in a greenfield site. There has to be a commitment to that momentum for the overall site and its continuity. So I agree with you.
Is your intention, Kraus Anderson, to purchase more of the property and to go further into the site, or is your phase 1 is kind of that's what you're looking at now? I'm interested to see what your future plans are.
Yeah, we would happily work on more.
Okay.
Terrific. Commissioner Murray? Anything else? Thank you. All right, with that, we are out of time. You want a quick question here from Councilmember Gunderson?
Councilman Roberts brought up grocery. I'd like to see numbers or things that you guys see in regards to pharmacy. I think in a community with as high percentage of children, young children that we have, the one thing people are kind of frustrated or get frustrated with is having to drive that 15 minutes when a kid's got an ear infection or a fever or whatever it is, and a half hour round trip going to wherever it is that we're going, because we don't have one of those either. So if there's small footprint pharmacy that you've seen that works, I don't mean a big Walgreens or a big CVS or any of that, but a small footprint Walgreens or small footprint pharmacy is something that if you can work it in there and see how that works, that would be publicly accessible. I'd love to see numbers and how that might work.
All right, terrific, thank you. With that, we are out of time, so I want to thank the Planning Commission members for joining us for this work session. Thank you to Kraus Anderson and team for the presentation. We appreciate it. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. We're going to take a couple of minutes and flip this room around a little bit and then